The desert lay quiet beneath a sky so vast it seemed to press against the horizon. Captain John Carver had seen many lands in his time as a soldier, but none so empty, so silent, so waiting. The air shimmered like molten glass, and the sand beneath his boots carried a strange warmth, not the heat of earth but something other. He did not remember how he had come here. One moment, he had been fleeing through the rocky hills of Arizona, the sharp cry of war whoops behind him. The next, silence. A crushing stillness, as though the world had turned over in its sleep and spilled him into a dream, but this was no dream. The ground thrummed faintly, alive. When he bent low, pressing his hand against the sand, he felt a pulse like the beating of a heart. Carver rose and scanned the horizon. Dunes shifted, red and gold, like restless oceans. Above him, two moons floated pale and ghost-like, one swollen and watchful, the other a sliver of silver light. Another world, he whispered, the words heavy in his throat. But why me? Something stirred in the distance. Not wind. Not storm. A shape, slender and tall, walking upright. The figure gleamed faintly, metal or armor, its stride precise. It stopped, as if sensing him, and then lifted a long spear that caught the light of both moons. Carver's soldier's instinct flared. He gripped the revolver at his side, though he doubted the weapon would mean much here. The figure called out, not in English, nor in any tongue Carver had known on earth. The voice rang, deep and strange, a command that rolled across the sand like thunder. Carver stood his ground. If this was to be the first test of this world, he would not meet it kneeling. The stranger lowered the spear, then raised an open hand, palm outward. A gesture of greeting or warning, and in that moment, Captain John Carver understood, the world itself was not asleep. It was awake. It was watching. And it had begun to do. The figure approached across the sand, each step leaving no trace behind. Carver's grip tightened on the revolver, but his heart urged caution. A man who survives long campaigns learns to measure before striking. The stranger stopped a few paces away. In the glow of the moons, Carver saw the being's face, narrow, with high ridges along the brow, and eyes a deep bronze, reflective like metal polished to a sheen. The armor it wore was not forged of steel, but grown, woven bands that pulsed faintly as if alive. The stranger spoke again, the words harsh yet rhythmic. Carver shook his head, spread his hands wide. I don't know your tongue. A pause. Then the being pressed a hand to its chest. Vale, it said slowly. Carver hesitated, then mirrored the gesture. Carver. The sound of his own name in this alien desert felt strange, fragile. Yet something softened in Vale's gaze. The spear lowered, and a sound like laughter, short, metallic, escaped the alien's throat, but the moment of calm shattered. The sand at their feet rippled violently, splitting open as if the desert itself were a sea. From below erupted creatures, six-limbed, scaled, their jaws bristling with teeth that glowed faintly green. Carver staggered back, his revolver flashing in the moon's light. The first shot rang out, and the recoil jolted him to the bone. One beast collapsed, writhing, but two more circled. Vale leapt forward, spear spinning with impossible grace. Sparks flew as the weapon struck scale, slicing through with liquid fire. Back to back, man and alien fought, their shadows stretched long across the dunes. Carver fired until his revolver clicked empty, the desert echoing with each defiant shot. At last, silence returned. The creatures lay still, their bodies sinking slowly back into the restless sand, as if the desert were reclaiming its own. Carver leaned on his knees, breath ragged. Vale stood tall, spear planted firmly in the ground, watching him with a new weight in those bronze eyes. The alien spoke again, softer this time, then pointed to the horizon where faint lights shimmered. Towers, perhaps, or fires burning in some distant city. Carver straightened, brushing the dust from his coat. One chapter at a time, he muttered to himself. If I'm to understand this world, I'll need to live long enough to read it. Vale extended a hand. Carver took it. And together, they began to walk toward the lights. The journey across the dunes seemed endless. Carver's legs burned, but Vale moved with the ease of one born to the sand. The twin moons shifted overhead, throwing long shadows, and with each mile the horizon glowed brighter, columns of flame, or perhaps towers of crystal, rising like a mirage that refused to vanish. At last, the ground hardened beneath their boots. The shifting desert gave way to a plain of red stone, cracked like the skin of an ancient giant. From the stone rose walls, tall, gleaming, covered in carvings that shimmered with pale fire. A city, alive with strange lights. Carver halted, astonished. So it's true, he whispered. Not just desert and beasts. A people. Vale glanced at him, expression unreadable, then struck the butt of his spear against the stone. The sound echoed, and moments later, gates of bronze and glass yawned open inside. Carver's senses reeled. Streets curved in impossible spirals, lined with structures that shimmered as though woven from threads of light. Beings of many forms moved through the city, some tall and thin like Vale, others smaller, cloaked, their eyes glowing faintly beneath their hoods. None seemed surprised by the sight of a stranger in torn earthly clothes. They entered a hall vast as a canyon, its ceiling painted with constellations Carver had never seen. At the far end, upon a dais of living crystal, sat a figure unlike the rest. Her presence drew the air from his lungs. She was radiant, not in the cold gleam of Vale's armor, but with warmth, with life. Her hair shimmered like copper touched by fire, and her eyes glowed green as spring leaves beneath a sun that did not exist on this world. The hall hushed. Vale dropped to one knee, his spear laid flat before him. Carver, uncertain, followed suit. The woman rose. Her voice was music, strange but soft, and though Carver could not grasp the words, he felt their meaning: welcome, stranger, and warning. The bronze-eyed guards watched from the shadows, their hands never straying far from their weapons. Carver understood, he was not merely a guest here. He was being weighed, measured. The woman stepped closer, her gaze fixed on him. For the briefest moment, Carver felt something stir, a thread, fragile yet unbreakable, binding his fate to hers. He had come to a world beyond Earth, a place of beasts, warriors, and mysteries. But it was clear now, this city, this queen or princess, was the heart of it. The story of Mars had only begun.